Hello everyone, my name's Stuart Gall. I'm CEO of MedaPhor, and I'm here to talk about how our intelligent ultrasound software and simulation products are unlocking the potential of ultrasound. Now, you're probably asking, well, why is ultrasound of interest to an investor? Well, the reason is that there are around about 50 million doctors, medical professionals in the world. So that includes GPs, nurses, midwives, paramedics, family practitioners, etc. But there's estimated to be about 50 million around the world, yet less than 2% of them have access to or the ability to use ultrasound scanning. And ultrasound scanning is a vital medical diagnostic tool. It is recognised as being one of the safest, fastest and cheapest medical diagnostic tools available. And importantly, it's reducing rapidly in both size and in cost. If you look at the machine here, this is what most of you might recognise from if you've been in to an obstetric scan, a 12-week pregnancy dating scan. You would have probably been scanned by a large machine like this. The size has come down where you look in emergency medicine. They're smaller, more laptop-sized systems. GE brought out the V-scan, which was handheld. That's now the sort of size of a large iPad. And only at Christmas this year, a company called Butterfly in America announced that it had the $1,000 ultrasound scanning device, and that it expected to bring the cost of scanning down so that you could actually plug a $100 device into your iPhone. So from our perspective, it means that the technology is moving the right way. It's coming down in cost, and it's coming down in size, opening up the ability for every medical professional to use it. And that's good because ultrasound is used in almost every medical speciality there is within the hospital. It's not just in obstetrics, gynecology, but it's in lung, abdomen, musculoskeletal, breast imaging, vascular imaging, heart imaging. Everywhere you look, ultrasound is used. And I get alerts almost every week coming through from all the different ultrasound societies and organisations, and they're all talking about the latest pathology that can be identified, or the latest area within medicine that can actually benefit from the use of ultrasound. So that demand is also increasing across the hospital. The issue is that ultrasound is a very difficult skill to learn. So it's a tough skill to learn. If any of you have actually done ultrasound scanning, you or know someone that does, you'll understand that what you've got to do is you've got to be able to interpret what is a 3D object, a kidney, a liver, a uterus, but you're viewing it in a 2D plane. Okay, so it's quite a hard skill to understand from a spatial awareness point of view. You need to have very good hand-to-eye coordination. You're moving an ultrasound probe over a part of the body, and micro movements of that probe in any plane means you can completely miss something within the body. And we've seen sonographers or doctors where they're scanning and literally they could miss something the size of a tomato within your body, and you're actually not able to see it if you're out of plane. Okay, and that's because you need to have sliding, rocking, tilting, rotational hand movements, and they've all got to be coordinated. You need to have good anatomical knowledge. You need to have very good image awareness of pathologies and normals, and you also need to understand all the relevant protocols that are relative to the speciality you're scanning in. But if it's done well and you have good training, you get very good diagnosis and improved patient outcomes. But if you don't do it well, if you've been poorly trained, you have the risk of misdiagnosis and then reduced patient outcomes. And that's why we believe ultrasound is still very much a specialist skill that is only done by highly trained specialist sonographers or specialty doctors. And that's why it's still in this sort of only 2% usage category. And our range of products that we have developed or are in the process of developing are all about how can we unlock ultrasound for the other 90% of medical professionals. And what I'll do now is take you through where those products lie. So there are three areas that we have developed or are developing product ranges within. So the first one is the area that people may have heard of us already in. MedaPhor started as a simulation-based company for teaching doctors and sonographers how to do the specialist ultrasound skills. And that area is a very important part of our business. It remains an important part of our business, and it's all about how you give clinical training, preclinical and then clinical training and assessment to all the current specialist users of ultrasound. And I'll talk about those products that we currently do that with in a minute. But importantly, last year we announced that we'd expanded our business and actually moved not just from training but also into the clinical side of ultrasound, and looking at how we can develop a range of software, tools and hardware that will actually support and guide ultrasound specialists in their scanning, so that you can speed up scanning, you can improve the accuracy of scanning. And they're all about using the new technologies that are coming into the marketplace now, artificial intelligence, led machine learning and augmented reality, and how can we use those tools to develop new products that can help in this area of supporting the specialist with new technology to make them faster and quicker. I will talk about those and take you through those in a minute. But then what is particularly exciting from our perspective is that the technology that is involved in developing these tools to support the current specialists also has the potential to be an enabling technology to open out ultrasound to more users within the medical environment. And I will talk about exactly what that means in a few minutes. So first of all, if we look at simulation, we are the gold standard in ultrasound training simulation. We have two products in the market at the moment, and one that's about to launch very soon. So the first product is Scan Trainer. This was how MedaPhor started, and it's all about using high fidelity, virtual reality and haptic technology to teach a doctor and simulate exactly how they would learn in the normal hospital environment, but we do it in a completely simulated environment. We basically take the expert doctor, we put him in effect in the computer, we put a virtual patient in there, we take real patient scans, and what this means is that this device here basically enables me to scan, in effect, over a virtual patient, but get the actual feel of scanning a patient, because the device pushes back at me when I push down on the belly or on the rib cage, and it actually feels like I'm scanning a real patient. So when I'm looking at the screen with the real scans from that patient, and as I move the probe, the ultrasound image moves in real time, it overlays a curriculum, it overlays an expert telling me what to do, guiding me, showing with colour guidance how to scan properly, and then importantly assessing me the whole time and give me metric-based feedback that shows exactly what I've done in a completely objective and structured way. That is a tool for teaching all the key obstetrics, gynecology and general medical skills. The second product that we have does exactly the same thing. Instead of using a virtual reality haptic device, so this one uses a mannequin, and this is all about teaching echocardiography, so ultrasound of the heart. The product's called HeartWorks, and again, this is also seen as the gold standard product in the field for teaching everything to do with echocardiography. The final product, which we're due to launch, is basically a sort of hybrid of the two. It's an ultra-realistic mannequin for teaching all the emergency medicine, critical care and intensive care ultrasound scanning skills. So it's designed to complement our range and give us the ability to use simulation to train all doctors in all the key fields of ultrasound scanning. And to date, we've sold about 500 systems in about 300 hospitals in 30 countries around the world, and we're looking to considerably increase those sales over the coming years. So the important thing about how we've changed the business, though, and the bit that I think a lot of people in the marketplace don't really realise about us, is that we have moved into this new area, which is all about supporting, guiding and auditing ultrasound using artificial intelligence-based algorithms. And we're able to do that because in October last year, we bought a company from the University of Oxford based on the research of a lady called Professor Alison Noble. She's a fellow of the Royal Society. She is one of the leading experts in deep learning-based image analysis in ultrasound. She talks all around the world about this, and basically her team and the group, this company called Intelligent Ultrasound, had reviewed, and they've got a database of about 380,000 images, obstetrics images, which they've had reviewed by sonographers, graded by sonographers, and that has enabled them to basically produce a product called ScanNav. ScanNav is a pre-commercial product at the moment. It is all about using automated image analysis for a 20-week obstetric scan. And what's important in scanning is that is all about getting the correct image, as I've explained before. The FASP scan that's done at 20 weeks in the UK, it's a protocol that you have to identify, in this case, 7 key images: the head in 2 planes, femur, face, spine, abdomen, and the heart, 4-chamber view of the heart. And the important thing about those images is that it's actually very easy to get an image that you think's okay, but actually, if you haven't got all the substructures that are identified within the protocol within it, then you can't necessarily get a correct diagnosis. So it's very important to get that image correct. And our algorithm has been taught to basically identify all the key substructures. So in this case, if you're looking at the abdomen, there are a number of key substructures you've got to identify. You've got to see the rib at the top, you've got to see a stomach bubble, the aorta vein, the spine, the rib at the back, and then also the umbilical vein. And if you can see all those substructures, that is a good enough image to scan for, to diagnose from. So our system's been taught to identify those structures automatically. So we have a ScanNav plugged into the side of this, I think it's the GE machine at the John Radcliffe Hospital, where it was being first developed. And as that sonographer is scanning the patient, she'll be scanning the patient and she'll be looking for the abdomen. So she's scanning, she identifies what she thinks is a good view, she presses freeze on the ultrasound machine. The moment she presses freeze, our system basically does a real-time evaluation of that image and says, is that image good enough, and does it have all those structures in view? And if it is, it gives it a tick and a pass. If it isn't, it will then highlight with white or yellow, again dependent on the status of that scan as to whether there are structures missing or the structures aren't good enough. And the sonographer will then work their way around until they've identified all of them and had a pass on every single scan, so that they're in effect happy with that scan. Okay. Now, why is that of use? Well, a number of key areas, because most importantly, from a safety perspective, it means anyone that's scanning, new to scanning, just been trained, just arrived at the hospital, it means you've got this safety net that's sitting beneath them. It's like the expert standing next to them, real-time, giving them a real-time view of what they've done and passing them. It makes you faster at acquiring all the key images. It makes you more effective at getting the correct images, which raises the standard of the department overall, and also identifies people that aren't scanning properly, have got issues with it. And this is a big issue in places like China, where you've got huge variability in terms of the scanning skills. You've got fantastic big urban medical centres, university hospitals, but then you've got a big range of community hospitals in the rural areas that have very variable scanning done by the doctors. And this sort of device gives you the ability to have almost fully automated assessment of those images and standardization that they've got all the correct images in obstetrics, which is a massive issue in China, where you have almost 16 million births a year. They've just changed the policy that you can have 2 children, not 1. So again, that's expanding out, and you've got massive pressure on, you've got to get it right and not make mistakes. Now, from our perspective, the excitement about this technology is where it could take us, because deep learning image algorithms have the potential to basically give you scanning, automated scanning for all. So to de-skill the scanning process, to make more people able to do some of the simple ultrasound triaging skills. So for example, here you've got a paramedics arrived at a scene of an accident. They want to know, is there internal bleeding? At the moment, they would not have the ability to use ultrasound in the back of the van, but the potential for this product, this is conceptualized because it's showing where it could go. It's not an actionable product, to just be clear about that, but is that you would have a handheld device. These devices are starting to come out, as I showed you with the butterfly product earlier. But you would have a range of protocols that would be touch screen on there. You'd select, in this case, the fast scan. It would then tell you where to place the probe on the patient, first quadrant, second quadrant, give you a green light to scan, and then it would automatically scan for you and give you a either normal view, no need to refer, or a red for refer, this needs a specialist to look at it. So the idea is that you're able to de-skill and have many more people doing some of the key scanning protocols that are used by ultrasound. So ScanNav, we think, has got huge potential as we go forward. From an important perspective, the first ScanNav pilot product that I showed you on the previous screen, we just announced yesterday that had gone into its first pilot study within St George's Hospital, London. So that product is starting the process of commercialisation now and is in its first pilot study. There was an article in the Sunday Times on it that you might have seen. So the other area that we have developed in-house is using needle guidance and using augmented reality to improve needle guidance. And one of the issues with needle guidance is that it's a very difficult skill to do. You need really, it's a very highly skilled job. You need to have good skill with the ultrasound, and then you're guiding a needle in to either aspirate or inject, and you're going in areas where any error can have significant issues. You might hit a nerve or puncture an artery, etc. So the benefit of doing more needle guidance would be that hospitals can make considerable savings, because needle guidance can replace, in many cases, general anaesthesia. You have needle-guided anaesthesia, which is injected onto the nerve. But as I said, it's a very difficult skill to do. And if more people can do that, there's potential for hospitals to save approximately £1 million per hospital per annum in savings. But you've got this limit of it's highly skilled. And there's a big risk of error. So we have developed a product called Needle Guide. It's in its proof of concept phase at the moment. And this is all about taking the augmented reality headset. A good example of that is from Microsoft. And instead of now having to scan, look at the ultrasound machine, looking away from the area that you're actually injecting into, the headset enables that image, the ultrasound image, to be projected onto the field of view, exactly where you're doing the anatomical injection. It has voice-activated target identification of where you want the needle to go to. As soon as you've identified that, it then plots an automated pathway for you to follow with the needle. And importantly, we use our AI software algorithms to basically track that needle tip and keep the ultrasound plane in the correct plane of view. So because ultrasound has such finite views, if you don't have the plane in the correct plane of view, you can miss where the needle tip is, and that's where you get into problems, because you think the needle tip is a centimetre away from where it actually is. And this device is aimed at basically enabling more people to be able to do ultrasound-guided needling, significantly reducing the risk of error because you don't know where the needle tip is, and enabling more people then to do peripheral nerve block anaesthesia injections. We received an Innovate grant of £500,000 to develop this, which we won from in their Digital Healthcare Award that was announced at the end of last year, and we started that work a week ago. So we think there's another important area of development that's taking us into completely new areas of ultrasound software. Importantly, we have a direct sales network and a reseller network to sell through. We have offices from our simulation business is based in Cardiff at the hospital. We have an office in Atlanta, which has our US sales team. We have another office in Oxford, which is where we base all our augmented reality and our artificial intelligence-based research in. And we're just about to open an office in China, which we'll be announcing soon. In terms of resellers, we have about 30-odd resellers around the world who now sell the product for us and now fully up to speed to selling the product going forward. Revenue-wise, we just announced, we haven't done full figures, so I can only say what the headline figure is, which was about 4.1 million last year, but we're clearly looking to continue that growth of our simulation business while we do all the development of work of the bigger, larger potential markets for the artificial intelligence product. So this has all completely changed our business in our view. And what I'm here today is to start telling people about this, because we have been traditionally seen as a business that's all about simulation in relatively small markets, but we've now expanded into deep learning and augmented reality to expand into clinical software, which has got much larger potential markets. and also with the potential to really radically change the way ultrasound could be done in the next 5, 10, 20 years' time. That, we believe, has given us a unique combination of simulation-based training with artificial intelligence-based image analysis combined with augmented reality image guidance that really truly does give us the potential to unlock the potential of ultrasound for all medical professionals, not just the current 2%. Thank you. Oh, just so I did print off the hard copy of this presentation, and they're all in the room outside if anyone wants to take one away with them afterwards. Okay, thanks.
Questions, anybody? Lady down the front here.
So is ultrasound training available to medical students rather than people who are already qualified professionals?
Yes. 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 So ultrasound is trained both as a medical student for 2 weeks. It's very much a sort of cursory training where you just understand it. But when you then specialise, if you go into obstetrics or vascular or heart, you then have to do specialised ultrasound scanning. If you become a sonographer, you have to have very specialised ultrasound scanning. So you have medical students learn it at a small not cursory level, but it's part of their programme, roughly 2 weeks, 3 weeks of learning. But when you really want to learn the skill, it's when you're specialising as a doctor.
What if you're just a nurse? Is it available to...
Well, at the moment, no. So a midwife might learn. It's not necessarily always part of what you do, but these are all ways that technology is trying to help, in effect, enable more people who are less skilled to do some of the more simpler scanning tasks.
Thanks.
It's called ultrasound, but I'm not sure what sound it's picking up. And how does sound come into it on your screen? Are you sending out a pulse and getting some reciprocal?
Yeah, so it's exactly like sonar, but it's done at a level that's low enough, obviously not to cause any harm to anyone, but it sends out, in effect, a sound wave that then the reflection of that is picked up. You see it as a grayscale image, and then you interpret that image.
Is there any advantage over CAT scanning or...
Yeah, so the advantage over CAT scanning, X-ray, MRI is that it's cheaper, safer, faster, and you do it at point of care. So point of care is very much the buzzword at the moment. You're basically doing the diagnosis at the patient's bedside. They actually see the image while you're scanning, and you talk through what you're seeing. Whereas if you go and have an X-ray or an MRI, you have to go off to an imaging centre, have that image done, and then you get the diagnosis back afterwards. This is a faster, quicker, simpler method of diagnosis.
Is that what's done on pregnancy testing now?
So yeah, so this is where most people would know it from, would be from seeing a 12-week pregnancy dating scan or a 20-week image, or the 30-week image is the last scan you normally do. So there's normally 3 scans, unless you've got issues, and then obviously you have as many scans as required.
Any more questions? Gentlemen down here.
Are you an AIM-listed company?
Yeah, we're AIM-listed. The code is MED, M-E-D. We listed in 2014.
Okay, thank you.
Are you facing stiff competition from other ultrasound companies around the world?
Well, the ultrasound companies don't tend to get involved with the training. The area that's going to be the most competitive is going to be the whole area of artificial intelligence. There's a massive amount of investment going into research in this area to bring out new products. We've focused on ultrasound because that's where Professor Alison Noble, that's where she is one of the world's experts. So we think with us getting our first product into pilot, that's actually proving its capability within a clinical environment, and that will enable us to bring one of the first commercial products to marketplace, certainly what we're hoping and aiming for.
Lady at the back.
Hi, hello, hi.
Hi.
You mentioned 4.1 million. Is that your revenue?
Sorry, that's the revenue, yeah.
And how much is your profits?
We don't make profit at the moment. We're still in the investment phase at the moment. So last year we lost, so the headline figure was we lost 2.9 million last year.
So how are you going to fund that?
How do we fund that? So we've been funded by investors who are recognising that we are in the investment phase, that we're in, the markets are potentially considerably larger than we're currently selling into, and so we have had investment funding to basically take us through to profitability.
So what's your projection for next year or this year?
So we can't give a projection because we're AIM listed. There is one analyst projection out there for next year, which is about 6.5 million turnover.
You mentioned that ScanNav is now into pre-commercial stage.
Yeah.
How long do you think the project, the pilot run will be for?
So we're expecting that we will be in a position to look at bringing out a sort of first commercial version of the product towards the end of this year. And in its sort of more elemental form. There's a lot of work in this. There's going to be lots of different variations, and obviously a lot of the feedback that we'll get from the pilot study will then enable us to say, right, well, this is what's commercially needed from an actual clinical use. So there's a big difference between saying something works from a technology perspective and actually what's required for you to sell it. Because ultimately, people might like it, but they'll say, will you be able to get people to get the pounds out of their pocket and buy the product? And that's what, in effect, we'll be working on now, is what's important from a US market perspective, where it will need FDA, and we will have to put through some form of FDA approval. UK market, what's appropriate, but also, I think, really importantly, from the interest we're seeing from a Chinese perspective, is how can we adapt that technology to an area where there's a real obvious need.
Lady at the front again.
You mentioned that the cost of ultrasound is coming down. Is it yet available on the National Health Service, or is that not yet possible?
No, everyone. Ultrasound is used in every hospital in the UK, in every department. Anyone goes to the UK hospital now, they will have ultrasound everywhere.
Your ScanNav product, obviously, in your acquisition, they've got 380,000 images.
Yes.
Is it possible, do you think, of collecting that sort of size, you can look for anomalies and therefore diagnose automatically?
So a lot of the work in AI is not just about identifying structures, which are important from a scanning perspective on ultrasound, but also can you use that to identify certain anomalies. There's been big focus on cancer, oncology-based spotting nodules, etc., on breast imaging, things like that. So in theory, yes, it's all about the size of the database. Again, if you want to identify pathologies, you need to have then a very large pathology database, and there's lots of different variations. At the moment, our focus has been on basically the importance of getting an image. We're not offering a diagnostic tool, so we're not making the diagnostic decision. We're saying we give you the image that is good enough to make you, the specialist, identify something. If it's normal, you can tell that from the image, but we don't do pathology identification as yet.
Okay, two more hands here. A gentleman at the front and then the one behind.
Who actually owns the data? Because if it's done by where you sell the equipment and the hospital owns it, do you actually have the rights for the data so that you could have something like what's been expressed, where you can potentially have an algorithm figuring out where the errors might be and then flagging them out?
So the algorithm. So we build our data. So we work with different partners. In this case, we've got partners that have provided the 380,000 images. That's all through official agreed partnerships. A big area for us will be to continue to secure more data. So we have more images. So we have a bigger data bank of images as we look to expand, not just from obstetrics, but into echo, any other area we want to expand the ultrasound imaging into. What the product doesn't do is adjust and learn off images as it scans live, because then you would have the issue about the product be changing all the time. So how do you standardize that and regulate that? So we basically build our database of images, then release a product based on that. And that then is an ongoing development where we might look then to release a new version of the product, but we've been through, in effect, more validated procedures that have been through regulation.
Gentleman just here.
If you've already got the technology to kind of tell an operator that they've got the correct image, could you not just build a fully automated system that would look for that image anyway?
That is version 2, which is in effect, so first version is what I'd call semi-automated, which is you initiate it. The second one is that as you scan, it basically does a live scan of every image and says ping, 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 there are the 7 images. That is exactly what the product development pathway is. There will be a slightly more detailed regulatory pathway for that because you're automating some of it. But we still think that because you are still controlling the scan and because you still do the diagnosis, we don't give you the diagnosis, that actually still will be a relatively simple regulatory pathway. But that will be the big step change in terms of adoption as soon as you can automate that process and speed up that process. And every operator, importantly, every operator always has the ability to override. So if you're the doctor or sonographer that's scanning, you say, well, I don't agree, I think my image is right, you can log that, but it logs that you then chose to reject the image and logged your own one, or vice versa.
Just to be clear, you don't make ultrasound machines at the moment, do you?
So we do not make ultrasound machines. We're not into technology manufacturing like that, we make the software. So we're a software enabler to enable all these services to work. And importantly, we aim to sell it not just either through partnerships with original equipment manufacturers, so the Samsungs and the GEs and the Philips, and working with them to have it embedded in their new machines, but also the ability to retrofit so you can add it to the side of the machine. At the moment it's done through an iPad or a laptop that plugs into the side of the ultrasound machine, so as you're scanning it's a secondary screen that gives you all of this information. That gives us the ability, to start selling immediately as soon as we have a product, and also the ability to target the bigger used market opportunities. It's a bit like navigation in cars. Navigation in cars was very much, you all had TomToms at the start, and then eventually the OEMs, it was all embedded within it, and so that market shrunk as the OEM market grew. I'd see it be pretty similar here, where you'd be trying to sell the product in to all the existing machines as the new product starts to get embedded. That certainly would be our aim and what we'd like to see happening, and certainly what we're trying to work towards.
Stuart, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.